So I'm officially going to start the first Friday. As people are still wandering in, we all enjoyed a nice meal and it's been comfortable and casual, but we'll go ahead and start. So on behalf of the Inclusion Committee, it's the Inclusion Committee that approached the First Friday Committee. Thank you, Lois, for working with us. To bring the program to you. And we had an opportunity to have a really excellent speaker come. So the committee has, we set this up. And I'm going to introduce Erica. I don't know if everybody knows Erica or not. Erica Baruch works for Jewish Disabilities Advocates, which is part of Jewish Family Services. And she works with us here in Boulder. She works with us in Har Hashem. She works with several congregations in Denver, actually Chabad, and does a fabulous job of providing us with materials, inspiration, and also coordinating what all the various congregations are doing, so that if one congregation has a good idea, we can pass it on to another one, and it really makes the whole Denver-Boulder area strong when it comes to inclusion. So Erica is going to introduce our speaker, and we'll go on from there.
Thank you. So, thank you so much, Judy, because I don't have to say very much now, because Judy said...
In the name of inclusion, do you remember that there are people on live stream?
Right, so we were positioning this under the microphone, and we know that there are people on live stream, so thank you for anyone who's joining us on live stream. And we know that is part of the inclusion programming that happens here at Bonei Shalom in making things accessible. And so Judy did a fabulous job in describing a little bit of what Jewish Disabilities Advocates does, and as when we were here in February, talked about accessibility and accommodations in Jewish spaces. So I still have a handout that we produced around this. These are some of the materials Judy spoke about, and there's more of these copies. But because we were coming up closely on the Passover, one of the things we always want to promote is how to host an accessible Seder. So I'll leave some of these around at the front and at the table out there. But we really understand, and we have these suggestions from many individuals throughout the Boulder and Denver communities who have different types of disabilities and offered to share their thoughts on what it means to them and how to really host an accessible Passover Seder. So one of the things that I've learned in doing this work is that there's lots of things that we can do around accessibility. We build buildings in different ways. We provide different types of accommodations like virtual attendance. We provide different ways for people to hear and see. And one of the other things that I've learned is that there's lots of accommodations we can make on a one-to-one level as well. And one of the issues that we haven't talked about as much among Jewish disabilities advocates is dementia. And so it's been my great pleasure to get to know Wally Klatch, who has early stage dementia, and we have been working together. Part of Wally's mission is to raise awareness and conversation about dementia. And that's something that we're doing across all the different congregations and community partners we have in the Denver and Boulder metro areas. And one thing I've learned in working with Wally is that there's accommodations we can make for people who have dementia or have other cognitive impairments. And one of those things is what you guys are trying to do is wear name tags, because as Wally reminds me all the time, he doesn't always remember somebody's name, even if he met them last week. And also that there's times that we're working together that we'll just remind each other sometimes about what the program is and what the date is.
You're being very kind. Erica has learned beautiful ways to remind me of things without me really feeling like, hey, dummy, did you forget again? So it's one direction.
Yeah, could I just add that dementia is not required for not remembering names.
Absolutely. And Judy was the one who instigated the name we were doing this at multiple congregations, the name tags, but Judy was the one here who instigated that because she's such a fabulous inclusion committee member. And the inclusion committee is so fabulous, but that it's something that Judy struggles with. And she said that very openly, and lots of people do. And so that's why it's an accommodation. And it's what we say too is that something that is good for people with disabilities is often good for everyone. That's why we have curb cuts. I mean, curb cuts were designed for people with disabilities, but they help moms with strollers. They help people with all different kinds of, different needs with mobility, but also they're just helpful for people who are carrying their groceries and don't want to go up a step. So this is true of lots of things. But what I was saying is we can learn a lot from individuals if they share with us what they need. And Wally has been very gracious in sharing some of the things that he needs to operate better in the world now that his memory is declining, his brain is not working the way it used to. And those are the personal accommodations that we can make. So one of the other amazing things about Wally is that he is a scholar and a studier of the Torah. And he spent 30 years in Israel. He would approach people on the street and ask them about the Parsha. And now he has taken upon himself to put a understanding of each Parsha as it relates to dementia, and created a website. And he looks at every week. There's something he will write about the Parsha and how his perspective comes together to inform others, inform us about what we can see in that Parsha as it relates to dementia. And so it's a beautiful thing. I've learned a lot by listening to him. And so I want to turn it over to him to talk about this week's Parsha. And he's going to share how the Torah and the Parsha has also guided him in his journey since he's been diagnosed with dementia. Is that good?
Very nice, Erica. Any comments I'll give you later.
Okay.
not in front of everybody. So let me start with 2 words of gratitude. One is to Erica, I'm on a mission to raise awareness and conversation about dementia, and Erica has been fabulous in giving me opportunities to do exactly that. So I appreciate Erica. And another woman from Jewish Family Services, Carol, in Denver, introduced me to a rabbi who I've really like him and have followed him and actually communicate with him sometime, and that's Rabbi Ben Bagbag, who is in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers. And Rabbi Ben Bagbag, one of the things he said is, take the Torah, turn it around again, and you'll always see different things in it. And he said the Torah contains everything if we know how to look at it and how to, find the different angles. So I just want to mention that in gratitude to begin with. As Rabbi Mark said, this week's portion of Vayikra is all about the sacrifices. And there's a lot that could be said about the sacrifices. Along in this week's portion, there's a part where it describes if a person does a certain sin, he has to bring a certain sacrifice and do certain things. And then a little after that, it talks about a person who does the same sin, but he brings a different sacrifice. So that's very peculiar, because why should 2 different people who do the same sin, why should they bring different sacrifices? So with the second person, it uses the 2 words, lo yada. He didn't know. And as Erica said, I read things from the perspective of dementia. So I take lo yada as, see that? I forgot his name. Jeffrey. That's a demonstration of exactly what happens. As Jeffrey says, lo yada is less cognitive. He forgets things, and he gets confused about stuff like that. So the second person, who lo yada, that gets confused sometimes, he brings a less sacrifice. So the first one, the fully functional person, brings the animal, does a certain ceremony, and then kills the animal. The second person, who has dementia or is aging or whatever it might be, brings the animal, but then passes it over to the priest to do the rest of the ceremony. So he's doing less. So given that the fully functional person does more, and the person who is less cognitive with age or dementia brings less. So just like the proverbial glass of water, is it half empty or half full or half empty? We could say, is the dementia person, is the sacrifice that person brings, is it half full sacrifice? Mitzvah. Did he do the mitzvah halfway up or halfway down? Doing the mitzvah halfway up, you would say, well, at least he did the first part of bringing the animal, so it's a mitzvah that's halfway full. Or you could say it's a mitzvah that's halfway empty because he did less than what the fully functional person did. So that's a question, is just trying to understand the difference between the way the two are required to do. Is the mitzvah half full or half empty? In the very next verse, after it describes the dementia person, it's a very strange verse. It's a verse that consists of 5 words, and out of the 5 words, 3 of them are the same word. So that's a verse that sort of says, hey, pay attention. Something's going on here in this verse. Only 5 words is already special, and if you have 5 words that make 3 of them the same, then that also is interesting. It's not a problem, it's interesting. So the 5 words, it says, Ashamhu, those are the first 2 words are Ashamhu, and after that it says, Ashom Hashem la Hashem, to God. So the first 2 words are, he requires to bring this sacrifice. This person, even though he has dementia and is lo yada or aging, he's still required, and he bought. It's considered what he did as if he bought it as bringing the sacrifice. And then the last 3 words are Ashom Hashem Lashem. The second person, the person with the dementia, felt guilty. He had feelings. To God, between him and God, there was feeling. He felt very guilty, knowing that he had done something that was not in line with everything else. So he felt guilty. It was a feeling thing. So what I understand from that is that the question of whether the mitzvah is half full or half empty is a wrong question. It's not the right question. What that 5-word verse says to me is part of his bringing the sacrifice, the physical act of bringing the sacrifice, that was half the glass. That filled up the bottom of the glass. And the rest of the glass was filled up with his spirit, his energy, the fact that he felt very much. He didn't do the formal act, but he did feel it. He did have the feeling, so that fills up the glass. That's part of the glass of the mitzvah that we don't see. We don't see it, but it's there as his feeling, as his expression of his feelings. So actually, the mitzvah was full, was completely full. We just only perceive half of it. The other half is the fellow's intention and his energy and his feeling very much. A couple of weeks ago in Parshat Truma, in the portion of Truma, it's amazing. That's all I can say. the first half, or the first part of the Parsha, the portion of Truma, is this really detailed description of all the furnishings to put in the tabernacle, and it's detailed, and what measure and what material. Yeah, I see that some of us are familiar with how complex and details, and then the second part of Parshat Truma is the exact same thing. It just keeps going in being detailed. There's one verse right in the middle, just sitting there by itself, and it says, "Not a thing." The whole portion is about things, and right in the middle there's a verse that says, right above the ark, right above it, and in between the wings of the two cherubim that are on both sides, that forms a space. The space above the ark and between the wings, there's a space in there. Not only is there a space in there, that verse says that is where God is going to speak with us. God says, "I will speak with you in that space." Well, that's already astonishing. The whole thing is about building holy things, and this, and the table, and this, and that, and the other. And God says he's going to speak to us through a space, not through any of those things. And then if that's not enough to knock us off our chairs, it says, "And I will meet you in that space." Oh my goodness. He will come and meet us. If he wants to give us a hug, he will do it through that space. And if we want to give him a hug, we'll do it through that space. So there's that space right there. The holy space, it's a space. It's not a thing at all. So that space, as part of my condition, and my thinking is going down. I feel my brain working less. And as a result of that, there's more place for my feelings to come up. And as the question was asked during dinner, what did I always do as a professional? I was a management consultant in organization and operations. That I made sure every line was straight, every box was arranged properly and stuff like that. And now, there's somebody else called Wally now, who is not on lines at all. It's all about the feelings that are becoming much more available to me. And I'm honest in what I say. I like this Wally better than I like the other Wally. And that's my feeling. It's all feelings. But what that has led me to do, because it related to this space, I feel that's a space that is the same space that has become available. It's a space, I call it my guts, that I can communicate and do a lot of feeling much more than I was able to do before. So I consider I have that same space, just like the space above the Aron and between the wings is a space that's really a holy space. And then I would say more than that. It's not just me. Everybody has that space. And I call it life noises. Life noises is our head working too much, and that noise hides our holy space. But we all have the holy space. Okay, so if I take that back to this week's verse, there were two different people. One who was normal and the other who was with dementia. I say those two are the same people, the same person. Just like people are in different places in life, the same person can be the person who is fully functional with his head and with his guts, but that same person can transform to be the person with less life noises, as I call them, and more guts running his life and leading his life altogether. So that's how I see the portion, this week's portion of Vayikra, as really talking about us and how we operate in terms of our head activity and our guts activity, and tie it back to the Arona Kodesh, where it says this space, and that's where Hashem is going to talk to us. So that's my take on a bit of this week's portion and tying it back to that. Thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Wally, so much. So Wally has again, as we've said, looked at each of the parshas, and he is really trying to spread a message of raising awareness and understanding dementia and raising conversation. So we hope that the rest of the time is really conversation. But one of the things I know, because I've sat with him a couple times, is to just start off with a few questions that others have asked. So I will ask kind of an interview format, but at any point, if anyone has a question, please just chime in. But one of the things people have asked, which is a very simple, straightforward question, is how old are you and when you were first diagnosed?
I'm 71 years old, and I was diagnosed in Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem in October of 22, about a little less than 2.5 years ago.
And can you share a little bit about how you shared that news with your family and how you continue to work with your family as you have progressed in your journey?
Dementia is not like taking your blood pressure or measuring your temperature. It's not like that. And with all due respect to neurologists and all of the machines and all the tests you can do, I've asked even my neurologists, they don't know. It's not a measurable thing that you can know what it is. It's really the person themselves has to feel what's going on. And I very much do. And I watch the kind of things that are happening, how much I forget and this and that, as my own measure of where I am. So in answer to your question, I'm watching what's going on with me. And at some point, I felt I need to tell my 4 children what's going on. I reached that point where I felt that. So we went through a process, me and the children, and also my ex-wife, who's been very supportive of this whole process, where I sat with each of the children separately and then together, and each one in the way that I thought was most appropriate to him or her, I told them. And just like it was a shock, an incredible shock for me, even to hear the word dementia connected with me, to this day, I either can't or it's very difficult to use the word dementia and my own name together. It just doesn't belong together. So I don't expect any more than that from my children. So yes, I told them. And yes, they responded. There was a lot of crying and a lot of hugging. And that was how I felt like I reached the right point. And so I went through a process very individually and then together with the children to tell them what the condition is, if that's related to the question.
And so what do you think were some of the ways in which you told Judy in that dinner and here, what your life was like a little bit, your job before you had the diagnosis of dementia? How has that changed your life? How do you operate now differently than you operated before?
I prefer doing these things completely authentic and completely open. It's easier. I'm not smart enough I couldn't remember tomorrow if I told a story today. So I just make it easier on myself just to say what it is. There are things now, like I said before, which in comparison to before, I call this my golden period, because I feel I have some of the advantages and benefits of this early stage dementia, which is less thinking and more feeling and stuff like that. I call it my golden period because I have the advantages, and the horrible disadvantages are still at some point in the future. So, for example, in relation to what you're asking, what are the differences? For example, the word that sits in front of my eyes a lot, dementia is always this fist sitting in front of me because I've been diagnosed and I feel it, so that's always there. But one word which is constantly in front of my eyes is the word release. I feel released from so many things that I took for granted before. Released from, the first one is released from thinking too much and feeling more. That of itself is incredible release. Some things which I took to be, of course you live your life that way. Of course life is lines and boxes and doing everything right. I'm released from that. I'm released from a lot of the norms that I lived by before, and am released and able to explore for myself. And much of it is coming from inside, my guts, what I call it. And as Erica said, I read every week the weekly portion, and there are amazing references to dementia in each week's portion. There are descriptions of dementia, stories about dementia, and I don't want to, chas v'shalom, say any lashon hara, speak evil of anybody, but there are personalities in the Torah that when I read the story of those personalities, I think, wait a second, this guy's got dementia. I see the signs crystal clear that certain people who we all know and respect, pardon me for saying so, as a neurologist, if I was a neurologist, I would say that person's got dementia, and we ought to relate to him like that. So it's like being in a new world. It's for all the benefits and all the drawbacks. It's a scary new world. It's an unknown new world. But there's the choice of doing with it what I decide to do with it. And I don't mean to be talking too much.
No.
One of the things I've learned very much now that I'm in this condition is our language and our medical system are completely insufficient. There are things that I'm feeling for which there is no word. The most common example is mindfulness. Well, we've all heard of mindfulness and we know about mindfulness. Wait a second, my mind is working less, but I'm delighted my feelings are more. So if there's mindfulness, what happened to feelingfulness? So I invented the word feelingfulness. And if you look in the internet and look up feelingfulness.com, you will see a comparison of mindfulness and feelingfulness. And it will also mention there that you'll see that above, and if you scroll down, life noises, what I call life noises. What the world does to us has a big effect on us. And life noises are all the noises, and there are plenty of them that are mucking up our minds and not allowing us, if we could get rid of the life noises, we would be much more authentic to ourselves. And another one of the advantages of dementia is I can't take in too much. I cannot. There will be a conversation where I'm sitting there, and I hold up my hand, stop. I just can't take everything you're saying. Give me a moment to think about what you're saying, and then I say, okay, please continue right now. Another example of that, pardon me for blah-blahing too much, what do they say when you're at the neurologist and they don't say you're crazy or something like that. They say, oh, you have MCI, mild cognitive impairment. Oh, They just define that I'm an impaired person. No. I don't accept, especially right out of the box, you tell somebody that they're impaired, and I'm not feeling that I'm impaired. I'm feeling I'm released. So there's MCI, mild cognitive impairment. I say I have MEE, mild emotional enhancement. So that's how, and sometimes I'll introduce, it doesn't exist outside of me, but I'll say, oh, I have MEE, I have mild emotional enhancement. So pardon me for saying so, but if you're interested, MCI and MEE. Oh, if you go to the internet and put in MCI and MEE.com, you'll see the comparison of MCI.
That you wrote. It's your work?
Completely.
Okay, I have two thoughts. One's a question, and one is what you're saying about changing from mind to gut reminds me of the book by Jill Bolte Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
The one called Stroke of Insight, where she had a stroke.
Oh, wow.
And she has a new model of how we behave. And she said the stroke, she was a neuroscientist, is a neuroscientist. And when she lost her left brain, right brain? Right brain.
No, she
When
lost
she-
her left brain.
One
Right
side
brain
or
took over.
The one that we,
Her right brain
going
took
on.
over.
the one that's all
Both.
thinking.
Both.
She was such a brilliant thinker. When she lost it, she was in bliss. So what you're saying
Wow.
is exactly what she says.
Right.
So it's a very interesting book.
Could you just say her name and the name of the book?
Jill Bolte, Bolte, Taylor.
If you don't want to read the book, she has a TED talk, which is fantastic.
Yes, she has a
TED
TED
Talk.
talk.
Really good.
Oh, she does. Wonderful.
Yeah, Taylor, Taylor.
Great.
So I wanted to say that it just struck me that you're saying the exact same thing, that you can be in bliss if you let go of the brain. But I was wondering what.
Oh, wait, I'll just say that letting go, I use the word release.
Yeah.
I trust it's the precise same thing as you said before, an amazing feeling of release or letting go, exactly.
It's very interesting what you're saying. And I'm wondering what caused you to go and ask for a diagnosis?
I was living in Israel at the time, and I was having the usual forgetting stuff that pardon me for saying so, I was 68 or 67 years old. Okay, you get a little older wait a minute, I think he's Gregory. Jeffrey, gosh darn, I wanted to show off that I remembered.
The right sounds, yeah.
That's right. Well, there you go. That's right.
Right
So
sounds.
anyway, I was 67 or 68 years old, and I was forgetting things which you can always chalk up to a little bit of age and, whatever. And one day I went to Caesarea. I don't know if anybody's been to Caesarea. There's that beautiful stadium, the Roman stadium and stuff like that. Amazing thing. So I really was very, very joyful to have seen such an interesting place. So I called up my son and I said, wow, I was in this great place, Caesarea today. And I started to explain it. And he said to me, Dad, we were there together 2 weeks ago and you really liked it. And he explained to me what happened 2 weeks ago, what we saw, and we said, it was black. I had no recollection. And he was telling me what happened, and I had no recollection. That, instead of it just being realizing, because it's slowly, I needed that hit in order to say something is really wrong here. And that's, if that answers your question, that's why I went to the neurologist, because then I felt, wait, this is not right, to completely forget something from 2 weeks ago and be explained what happened, and I have no recollection. So that's what triggered the visit to the neurologist to begin.
which again, that's something that I've learned in working with Wally and having conversation and developing rapport, is that he shared with me that sometimes he has these black moments. And so now, we might be in a meeting with certain people, and then we're in a meeting with a few of the same people a week or two later. And I've learned to share, oh, this is the person that we talked to 2 weeks ago, and this is their name. But that's like the kind of accommodation that I'm learning how to make. And I still, like today, made a mistake because we were working on something for tomorrow, and another person said, well, I could print the copy. And I said, oh, no, I don't need it. And Wally said, no, I need it, because I won't remember what we said tomorrow that we discussed today in the same way I will if it's written down. So again, it's a constant learning.
Okay, and I'll tell you how well Erica has learned that. Instead of saying, oh, Wally, please remember that tomorrow afternoon we have to be somewhere, she'll say, Wally, in preparation for that meeting tomorrow afternoon, I think we should do this or that. So she's really reminding me without making me feel like she's assuming I forgot, which I accept. I did forget, no matter what. But she has learned to say things in such a way, and I'll just jump on that. There's a lot of things that people say that just doesn't fit very. Do you remember? Pardon me, I don't remember. Assume I don't remember, and don't keep at. And if you ask me the 100th time, that doesn't help me remember anything. Another thing people say is, oh, you don't look like you have dementia. Well, pardon me, when I start drooling from the mouth and can't put a sentence together, then you'll know, but it's too late for me. So I'm just saying.
Why I would say to you, but you don't sound like your dementia, is because there are many things you are remembering. And so I don't even have the words for it myself, how to react to the spottiness of memory, no memory.
You've expressed it very well. I can't understand it either. I think it has a lot to do with short-term and long-term. Short-term is much more troublesome, but long-term I can remember. I can remember, being in grade school. And I will jump on that because it's a feeling I have with no background whatsoever. I feel like I led life and I went up there and then I got to a down. I'm feeling now like, I think in junior high school, I also had a period of really writing poetry, and I just wonder, is this whole process, going back to earlier days? But in direct answer to your question, I have not identified. See that? Wait a minute, now I know. Jeffrey, there you go. See that? If you tell me a couple of times and just 5 minutes later, so why did I remember Jeffrey now and I couldn't before? And I do that a lot. I take it as a challenge to measure myself also. Can I remember some? And names, faces, and circumstances are among the toughest things. I just don't do it.
Well, I think it is true that for many people, their most productive time is when they're teenagers or early 20s. Mozart was writing great music when he was not even a teenager.
Wow.
On the other hand, there are some people who do their best work when they're 60s and 70s and 80s.
So I hear from what you're saying, it's different. So it's going to things manifest themselves completely different. It's a very individual thing. And that's why, just going back to before, only the person themselves can really feel what's going on, measure. And I try to pay attention to it now because I'm in this condition. So I try even to, what do I remember? And I'm not, I haven't found rules or principles.
Well, we first figured out that there was something wrong with my mother when she lost her car. Mm-hmm. And it never came back, where the car was not stolen. there were not enough parking spaces at the doctor's office. And so she ended up putting the car across the street in a parking lot and never remembered that she did it. And finally, a month later, the police called and said they found the car. And my brother, who believed her entirely, my brother thought that it truly had been stolen and somebody put it back. No, the car was in perfect condition. She'd locked it, she'd left it at the grocery store instead of at the doctor's office, but she never remembered that it happened. But she told me, my dear, I will never forget you. And she never did.
That last sentence that you had, I was going to say something about the car, but that's one of the most horrible parts from my perspective, when the parent doesn't remember the child and the child knows that the parent doesn't remember them.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, I was interviewed twice on Israeli television because nobody talks about dementia. Nobody talks about these things. I was willing to, so I was interviewed twice on Israeli television. And the interviewer asked me about that. I find that an incredibly difficult, and I expressed the idea that I find that to be an incredibly difficult. And then the interviewer turned to there were two cameramen, kind of, young guys in their 20s. And she asked them, what do you think about that? And both of the cameramen said they both had either a parent or a grandparent, and both of them said, I know my grandmother doesn't know who I am, but I'm glad to be able to sit opposite her, give her a kiss on the forehead. So his perspective on this exact situation, he was glad that she was there, even though she didn't remember who he was. And that's a principle. This whole thing about dementia, it is completely personal. It's different for every single person. But just to provide another perspective, and there is no right or wrong. There's no black and white. It's all gray, so to speak, which is exactly what it is. But yes, she will always remember you.
Her face lit up when I walked into the room.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. And I'm sure her intentions are great. It's not in her hands. It's not in her hands at all, whether she will or won't.
I think Rabbi Mark had a question too.
Okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, I very much appreciate what you were saying about how Erica has possibly learned, but I find that from you anyway, Erica, is that you're cognizant of the human being, and language can be kinder. It can almost always be kinder. And when we are cognizant that we're talking to a human being, we're more careful than, well, of course, I'm going to know that they know this or don't know that, or it's okay for me to say, yeah, you didn't remember that. But it's not okay. And so I'm very appreciative that that you're doing this to raise awareness, because I think that we will have less conflicts when people speak kinder to each other.
I just want to point out that people on live stream, I think it's worth, if you can,
Repeating
just,
the question.
well, it wasn't really a question, but
Oh.
the observation, just because if people are on live stream, they won't have heard that, and I think it's important what Anisha said. If you can.
So what Anisha was saying is that she really feels, and please correct me if I'm getting, but that the importance of using language in a way that is kind and that adapts to individuals' needs and that shares that we are all human beings and we're all trying to associate with each other as human beings. And when we do so, and we do so in a kind way, it really is a gift to the other person and a gift to ourselves. I would say, I'm adding on to you now, but that I think that the relationship that we've been able to have in learning about each other, and I mean, I've learned so much from Wally, and so that helps me navigate other things in my life, and it's been a beautiful time to be able to share and learn more about dementia, but also about his perspective and how that relates to other things that are going on in my life, and how we can interact with others. And again, it goes back to the work that we're trying to do in making sure we're all doing the work of being accommodating to others in our community, regardless of what challenges they may have. And when we do so, we really build that community. We build that sense of belonging. We build that connection. So, sorry, I kind of took that a little bit further.
If you don't mind, just to add on to that exact same thing, in reading the Torah, this is all there. As Rabbi Ben Bagbag said, it's all there. And there's three words that are astonishing related to exactly what you just said. At that one point it says, Vayigash Elav Yehuda, where Yehuda comes after Joseph and his brothers and all these arguments and power plays and stuff like that. And it says, Vayigash Elav Yehuda, and I take that to be exactly what he approached Joseph. He didn't come in a power. Vayigash, he approached him, and what was the result for Joseph? Joseph turned to the side and started crying. Pardon me for saying so, like I myself also started crying. But that, in my mind, Vayigash Elav Yehuda is exact. You can say things in a lot of different ways, and Yehuda understood how to approach Joseph to talk to him in exactly the way that you just described.
Wally, I'm really glad that you brought it back to the Torah for a minute, because that's what I wanted to go back to myself. Maybe that's sort of a stereotype, but I think your insights that you shared briefly about Torah and how you're seeing it through the lens of who you are today are beautiful, original. You know, as a rabbi, I've obviously studied these texts, and I've never heard those kinds of interpretations. And so, you know, kol hakavod, it's beautiful, shukayach. And I'm also really curious to know what your relationship was to the Torah before you started seeing it in that way. I mean, were you also studying the Parsha every week before you had this diagnosis? Were you, and how different was the way you were reading it then to how you're reading it now?
Okay. Apparently I can't pass up an opportunity to tell people about resources. So just in general about your question, what I talk about is dementia.
Just repeat the question for people.
The question is, what was my relationship to the Torah before, and how much, if I correctly understood?
Absolutely.
I'll just say, in the terms of the topic of dementia in the Torah, if you go to dementiainthetorah.com, that's
do you have, Wally?
What's that?
How many .coms do you have?
No, I have a lot, because one of the ways I remember when I get an idea, and I know how it's not pretty. No web designer would accept what I do, but that's one of the ways I remember. And I started getting these ideas every week, and suddenly I said, well, I need to put them down, otherwise they'll get lost. So I created dementiainthetorah.com, and it has, in brief, every single week that I.
And I turn it into a book. It sounds like it's a book.
Not yet, because
have to do it, baby. It's better.
I could. It's on the internet. Just here, I'm getting distracted again. I don't want to get into it, but somebody who I really find amazing in the Torah is Lot's wife. I think Lot's wife in 12 verses tells the whole story of dementia from start to finish. And a publisher has said, if I'll write 200 pages about Lot's wife, they'll publish a book about it. And I started writing, and got about to page 5. And so I unfortunately, I would love to write a book, but will I survive until the end of the book? And do I have the energy to write 200 pages? I don't know, but it related to a book that I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and I can't help but feel a small town environment. Maybe it's something like Boulder. You realize you're Jewish. It's not like there's this big institution and all that. So you play a role, and like that. So there, in Indiana, I was one of the laners, one of the people who read each week from the Torah portion and had a relationship. So, and I went every day. We had a rabbi, myself and my brother would go to the rabbi every day to learn a little Rashi. And so there were all kinds of things like that. Then I went for my junior year abroad to Jerusalem. So that also added to it. I went to Or Sameach, the yeshiva, because I was religious, and I can't help but also say I was in the army. And I was religious at the time that I was in the army. And one Shabbat evening, we were at Migdal David, at the Tower of David by Jaffa Gate there. And we were a religious group of soldiers. And during dinner, we sang the song, Al Chomotayich Ir David, Hifkareti Shomrim Kol Hayom V'Kol Halayla. On your walls, O Jerusalem, I have set watchmen all day and all night. And we sang that song, and then we got up, and we were the watchmen on. When you do something like that, you say, forget about it. My life has done everything I can. I can't beat that experience whatsoever. So that's what it was. I'm not from now. I drive, but that and also what happened, as was mentioned before, I got into the habit of knowing what parsha it was. Like this week is Vayikra, and I would just on the streets of Jerusalem, I go walk up to some whatever Haredi people religious people, I would say, Parshat Vayikra, can you give me a sentence or two? What do you feel about it? And I can tell you, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was if sometimes that person was waiting for me to walk up to me. It was amazing. I would ask the question, and they would instantly give the most beautiful comments about that week's portion. So those, I particularly like the week's portion, but those are the kind of things, not formal. That was, and I will say, pardon me but I've written
Creating your mark.
Thank you. It's good Erica is right here next to me so I can remember things. I created my mark. What mark do my guts told me one day, I have no idea, my brain wasn't involved. My guts told me, prepare what your mark is, what mark are you leaving on the world? And it took several weeks. That's not an easy thing to do, and I went through it, And so I defined what mark I'm leaving in the world. And one part of that is, as I was in the waiting room at Hadassah Hospital for the MRI, where they, based on that, was one of the things they diagnosed that I have this condition. I was in my blue robe, gown, whatever you call it, and there were two women there in their blue gowns. And as I like to do, I asked the two women, do either of you know Balak? It was Parshat Balak. And do either of you know about Balak? One of them really did. It was sudden. Our connection was amazing. And one of the two women reported it to Sivan Rahav Meir, that if you know is a very well-known broadcaster, a religious woman, and she put on the radio, she has a radio show, 1 minute and 43 seconds, report on what happened right there in that waiting room. She described it. One of the women reported to her, And it turns out that's part of my mark. That represents the mark of what so those are the kind of thing I have a very clear mark. And as the world works, as life works, I define fairly formally what mark I'm leaving on the world. And what has that become for me? That has become my lighthouse. That has become my guide. Oh, now I know what mark I want to leave on the world. Now I know better how to live my life. Because I've defined what it is that I'm bringing to the world. So I want to bring to the world that. So it's a guide for me. It's not that marble or granite or what with my name and date of birth and date of death. It is something completely different. And that's what it is. It started out as my mark, what I want, and now it's my guide as to, and I think of it often. As I'm going on, I say, wow, that's what I'm bringing, so that's how I should behave.
Beautiful.
It's all just, you know what it is? I feel it and I say it. I don't muck it up with brain stuff. So it becomes very easy because I feel and I talk and I don't have to think too much. Pardon me for saying so. Okay, I'll tell a very bad joke to complete. It's just a sentence that what can I say? It came in, you know what? I'll say this and then I'll say a better sentence. The first sentence that came into my mind one day was, dementia is a no-brainer.
.com.
What's that?
.com.
Well, I haven't gotten to the .com of that one. That I'll keep on the side. It's really bad humor. But there is another .com, now that you mention it. One day I was on by far, I get thoughts when I'm on long walks.
Yes.
Because the short walk isn't enough time, but a long walk in a different area, a different neighborhood or a different park, that opens up a lot of feelings. And one day I was walking along, and what popped up suddenly was the phrase, when living and dying dance a duet, what music will you play? That phrase.
Oh, I love it.
That's
what I needed.
No, you don't need it because there's a .com. So, I wasn't going to let that one go without a .com. So if you go to
We're living and dying, dance a duet, what music will you play, .com?
that's too long. So if you just go to livingdyingduet.com, I wanted to make it easier for people to remember. So living, and that phrase is theirs. You don't have to remember the phrase, just livingdyingduet.com and you're done. So that's, some people, I have pieces of paper in my pocket always to write things down, and I have my calendar on but sometimes if it gets too big, I just got to do a page, a .com on it, and
I'm looking you up for sure.
There's good stuff, you know.
Okay,
I need
so
to interview him later myself.
I'll tell you that there's one that is the umbrella that all this, so you don't even have to remember all this stuff.
I knew. I was waiting. I knew
Okay,
that.
I'll tell you what it is. It's Alzheimer's. So people should have conversations about Alzheimer's. So the Alzheimer's conversation, that's what the basis is. So if you go to the alzheimersconversation.com and scroll down a little bit, I've put you know what, it was too much for me. So if you scroll down the Alzheimer's conversation and just scroll down a bit, there's all these, it's a list because they were all getting lost. I felt like I kept making these .coms and I couldn't remember what the .coms were. So I made a list. I just had to put it somewhere. So on that page, you'll see it makes no sense. the order, anything like that, but they're all listed there.
Somebody
So
else could alphabetize it.
no.
It's
That's
good
too.
the way it
That's
comes
too
out.
brain. That's too much brain. I feel it and write it. If somebody else later wants to use their brain and help,
That's right.
that's up to them. So that's sorry.
I think that I don't know what. Yeah, I think this was a great opportunity to have a conversation, and the fact that Wally has so much there on the websites is also the ideas that we continue the conversation, right? That I think Wally came to us and said, I don't think that we're discussing dementia in the Jewish community. And we said, we think you're right, that this is not a conversation that we have very openly. And so he's on a mission, and now we're on a joint mission to raise awareness and conversation. So definitely invite you to go back to the website and then continue the conversation with others that you know, because it's something that we don't talk about as much as we probably need to. And we hope that there'll be lots more conversation following this. And we're glad that Wally's.
I just have to add to what you're saying. I take it to be at the level of a plague. I think dementia is destroying families, communities in the Jewish community. You don't hear about it. But the need to raise the conversation and awareness corresponds to the horrible destruction that dementia in its forms, Alzheimer and Lewy body and Parkinson's, is doing terrible destruction. And that's why, one of the reasons why people are suffering here continuously. Families are being destroyed by this plague. And that's why, thank goodness to Erica, these conversations and awareness are starting to become more widespread.
And Wally's offered this great gift of speaking throughout our community. So we're super appreciative, and hopefully we can continue to have conversations.
And I'm very appreciative. My mission, as long as I'm still lucid, this is exactly my mission. So you have helped me feel like I've taken another and Erica, of course, is continuously involved. I'm very appreciative because you've really helped me to take another step forward in the mission that I have, which is really important. I take a lot of importance, and I appreciate the opportunity to raise this.
I just want to really thank you, Wally, for being with us. I feel a little bit sad that not more people from the community heard you, because this was absolutely wonderful, engaging, informative, moving in all of the ways. So we're very grateful. It is on live stream, so hopefully some of you have been watching on live stream. And because it's on live stream, we will keep the recording of this, and we may send it on so other people can actually watch this conversation, because it was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Erica, and thank you, Judy, and thank you, Lois. May's First Friday is a whole Israeli dinner and a panel of Israelis living in Boulder who are going to be sharing their various experiences. So thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Really an honor.
Okay, Rabbi Mark,
Thank you.
thanks so much for the opportunity. Deeply thankful. Okay. Thank you.